Welcome to our Living with Dementia Forum, brought to you by Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska. This is an awareness event for National Alzheimer's Disease and Related Dementias Month, as well as a National Family Caregiver, Care Partner, or Care Companion Month. My name is Ann Ferris. I'm an educator with Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska. The moderator for today is my coworker, Debbie Chulik. She's also an educator with ARA, as we say for short. And she will introduce herself as well as our panelists in just a bit. A few announcements. This session is advertised until 2 o'clock, but we may go over, especially with our question and answer session. If you can stay longer, please do. But if you need to leave at 2 or earlier, we certainly understand. We're so grateful you can be with us for as long as you can today. Okay. All right, so a few more things. Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska is not affiliated with the National Alzheimer's Association, though we are working together with the Alaska chapter to raise awareness and serve Alaskans who are affected by Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. There are no medical or legal experts presenting today. If you need medical advice, please consult with a healthcare provider. If you need legal advice, please consult with an attorney. And finally, if you have questions for the panelists, you can type them, like Debbie said earlier, in the Zoom chat box, or we will be monitoring Facebook. Myself, along with my coworker Shelby, will be monitoring those questions that we can ask after the panelists speak today. So now I'm going to turn it over to Debbie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're so glad that you're here. For those that are just joining, we are doing a Living with Dementia Forum in appreciation for Alzheimer's and Dementia Awareness Month and Caregiver Appreciation Month. We're going to start with a brief PowerPoint about services that are available across the state of Alaska. Then we will come back and do a brief introduction and get into our panel. So let's start with the first slide, which is 211. If you dial 211 on your phone or go to www.211.org, they will be able to help you find resources in your community. They provide services such as childcare assistance or ideas for that, places to call. So that's the first one that's available statewide. Our next one is Access Alaska, Community Living Resources. Access Alaska has medical equipment and supplies, incontinence materials and supplies. They are available at 1-800-778-4488 or www.accessalaska.org. They have a large, what they call lending or loan closet. They say loan, but they give materials and supplies away that you need. Our next statewide resource is the Aging and Disability Resource Center, also known as ADRC. Their phone number and website is listed there across the state, 1-855-565-2017, and their website is listed as well. The Aging and Disability Resource Center is a great referral to call if you need some ideas about aging or disability services. They will also help you do some planning to figure out how to pay for services. So they're available statewide. Alaska Legal Services. Alaska Legal Services primarily supports people that are of lower income, but they have a ton of really, really helpful information on their website. You can give them a call at 1-888-478-2572. and let them know that you're interested or that you have some legal questions to talk about. Next, we have the ATLA, the Assistive Technology of Alaska. ATLA is a great resource if you are needing some information about grants to help pay for assistive devices or some computer equipment or some adaptive equipment that allows you to stay at home and have some assistance in technology or living. They can be reached at 907-563-2599, and their website is listed there as well. That's ATLA. Next, we have, for resources across the state, the Alaska Long-Term Care Ombudsman. Long-term care, of course, are assisted livings and skilled nursing facilities. Ombudsman, another word for ombudsman is advocate. The long-term care ombudsman is an advocate if you have any questions about long-term care assistance. They maintain a list of the entire state of Alaska that has all of the licensed assisted livings. They are available for consultations to help you get information about long-term care. 907-334-4480. Next, we have on our state, as of course, Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska. We are at 1-800-478-1080. Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska has care coordination in some parts of the state, including Juneau, the Mat-Su Valley, and Anchorage. We also have a loan closet at both the Mat-Su office and the Anchorage office with limited medical supplies and, again, incontinence products and supplies. When we talk about Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska, we have many, many support groups for family caregivers or for those living with dementia or related cognitive changes. Please reach out if we can be of assistance. We also have a mini grant. We partner with the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority to offer a mini grant for anyone diagnosed with Alzheimer's or related dementia, up to $2,500 for anything not covered by another funding source. Check out our website at www.alzalaska.org. And our next slide. Finally, the Alaska Dementia Action Collaborative created an Alzheimer's caregiver resource guide, a caregiver resource guide, not just for Alzheimer's. This is available in the current issue of the Senior Voice. It is available in print in our offices or on our website. So we hope that you'll check that out, the Caregiver Resource Guide. And those are the statewide resources that are available. At this time, we're going to move into introductions. I'm going to ask the people that are living with dementia to introduce themselves first. Then we will have the caregivers or care partners introduce themselves. For this introduction, very briefly, panelists, you can share your name, the city where you live, when you were diagnosed, what life was like before diagnosis, and what life is like today. Just very briefly, whatever you would like to share for that, and then we'll get more into our individual stories after we have a time of introduction. Lynn, if you would unmute yourself and introduce yourself briefly to us. Thank you.
Oh, I've got it written out so it'll be a little bit more, hopefully make more sense.
All right.
I'm a wife and mother of 3 adult sons, 4 men, including my spouse. Before dementia, I worked a professional career as a speech therapist in Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Alaska, helping others from birth through age 21 improve their communication skills. At home, I was everybody's everything, which in hindsight, lightly short-circuited my brain by being just too darn busy. As the saying goes, a woman's work is rarely done. I stayed awake most late nights just to remain caught up before tomorrow's dawn. I made sure that our 3 sons did well in school, learned positive values, and were raised to be self-sufficient. If I could change my history, we would have divided chore lists so that I too could have had free time for myself. In 2018, I noticed more difficulty remembering what I knew, so I requested to have my cognitive and academic skills evaluated. Replies to questions were sufficiently foggy and delayed to determine early onset Alzheimer's. Pulling information from my memory bank became a bigger challenge for me as words were on the tip of my tongue. I noticed errors in judgment on my last 2 jobs. 1, thinking that I could fill in for a school colleague on a short-term medical leave, and 2, safely assisting other senior adults with home care skills. I just couldn't do it. Whereas there was a nationwide shortage of speech therapists, here I was being ousted. Yes, it hurt my pride. I'm retired and remained independent, yet I preview my actions before and after my moments. For example, I double-check the presence of my car keys before I close the front door and make sure I have my to-do list in hand. More often than not, this list gets lost. I pretty much live as I please with family backup as needed. I can still drive myself around town while knowing that won't be a forever skill. I don't rush myself. I'm blessed to have a caring spouse and 2 adult sons with supportive extended family members. Some days are foggier than others. Naps are perfect medicine.
Lynn, thank you so much for that introduction and welcome. We're so glad that you're with us. Next to introduce themselves is Diane. Diane, if you could unmute yourself and introduce yourself briefly to us.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here and to share my story. My name is Diane. I'm a mother of 2 adult children, a grandmother of 2 grandsons, and I have a beautiful daughter-in-law. I'm a retired public assistance worker for 10 years. I'm an author, a speaker, a trainer, a traveler. I also do, and I'm learning sign language. I'm also previous self-employed notary. I have very involvement before my diagnosis, very independent, professional person involved in several clubs, volunteer organizations, Eagle Rivers, and Women in Business. I'm still a current member of Toastmasters International, Diamond Talkers. I do outreach ministry and ministry. I've traveled to Haiti and Israel, several. I've done the Alaska Regional Hospital Auxiliary, where I train for No One Dies Alone. Also, I was on several boards for the lupus chapter of America in Anchorage. Also, I was with Women Listen, numerous organizations, numerous activities, church involvement, faith, and spending time with family. I found after my diagnosis, I had to look at a poem I like to share. It's called My Mind. It's okay to speak your mind. It changes at times. The left side of my brain flows with rhythm and rhymes, and that's fine. The right side of my brain likes to see things in black and white and stick to the facts. I try to balance it all out as the two merge into one and hope to reach the set goal at hand and or to meet the demands and plans. I do want to share. I don't try to read people's minds because that's a waste of time. I like to share after the diagnosis, before the diagnosis of 2001, I live in Anchorage. I noticed that I have a severe hearing loss. And I noticed that people that have severe hearing loss can lead to dementia. Since I'm always trying to be proactive instead of reactive, I checked into it. And with my connections, being retired and with the Senior Activity Center, I was already connected with the Alzheimer's Association, doing memory games and doing the different activities that were provided. So when I was diagnosed in 2001, I was diagnosed, I've had a previous history of traumatic and current history of concussions, and diagnosed with traumatic brain injury and mild cognitive impairment is the current diagnosis. And when I think of dementia, just going to find after the diagnosis, what has changed in my life is when I think of the diagnosis, my normal routines and activities, I incorporated training in Alzheimer's of Alaska. I obtained occupational therapy. I've had obtained speech therapy, grief and spiritual therapy. I have also obtained Meals on Wheels, Anchor Rides, Atla Assisted Technology. I've arranged for chore workers and case management services. And after the diagnosis, there was a period when I had to think about what dementia meant. And I wrote out what dementia meant to me at the time after the diagnosis. I wrote out the word dementia, long ways. And for D, when it first occurred, I was distressed and dismayed at the diagnosis and the possible outcome. E was for emotion. I was very emotional. And M was for mourning, the loss of my memory. And the other E was for expectations, unknown about the diagnosis of dementia. And I felt needy. I felt I was going to have some needs. And then T, I felt tearful and terrified of what the future may hold. And D, at times I felt isolated. And A, I felt anxious. And then finally, the acceptance. So I want to thank you very much.
Diane, thank you very much. We're so glad that you're here. Appreciate you sharing that. And next for an introduction is Judy. Judy, if you could unmute yourself and introduce yourself to us.
Hi. I've been diagnosed for, I don't know, a year, maybe and a half. And it was, when it was in the beginning, it was really okay, because I'm still driving, I could do pretty much everything, but people would say, "You already told me this," that sort of thing, and I forget things, and I don't have anything written out. I'm sorry, I didn't do that. I did little things, but
that's okay.
Yeah, but it says like what it was. It says what it was like before dementia, and I said easy. I didn't have to think to drive to the destinations, et cetera, like everybody else. But then I realized I've been needing to do notes in the house, and then I just thought, well, maybe that's just the way it is. Sometimes I almost forgot what I need to do. So those kind of things, I'm sure everybody knows that. Anyway, yeah, it was, it's getting harder, and I'm still going out, I'm still driving. Luckily my motor skills are good. So thank God for that. And my dog and Jim, who's over here. Yeah, it is ramping up slowly, thank goodness. And I'm just, when it first started, I was like, well, I wouldn't went, oh my God, I'm going to die and I'm going to go this or that. I just went on with my life. So, and I'm still doing it the same way. So yeah, and I'm doing a lot of cleaning.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Judy. We're glad you're here. Thank you. Welcome. And next to introduce themselves is Jamie.
Let's see. I got this. Okay. So I worked at University, yeah. So, and then they knocked me out. So, yeah. So that wasn't a good deal, but I'm happy, as I can be, yeah. So that's my thing.
Thank you so much, Jamie. We're so glad that you're with us.
Thanks.
And now we'll move to the introductions for the caregivers, and we'll start with Colleen.
Great timing.
Yes.
So I think about 3.5 years ago, Jamie was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She worked at the university, like she shared earlier. It came as a surprise. I kind of knew something was going on, and I think you shared that you knew something was going on, but we were very surprised how quick the diagnosis came and how quickly you were no longer working. So we took an early retirement. Jamie did.
Just like me.
Yeah. And what else was I supposed to talk about? What it's been like since then? So the timing was such that I worked for probably about a year at the office, and then COVID hit, and so then I work from home now and will work from home forever. And so life is different. We certainly have a different perspective. We spend a whole lot more time together. One of the things that I wouldn't have ever guessed was how many friends I've made along this journey, because I'm not normally a very social person, but boy, knowing other people who are doing the same stuff we are is super duper helpful. Yeah. That does it. And we both missed this, but we live in Anchorage.
Thank you, Colleen. Welcome, both of you, Jamie and Colleen. So glad to have you with us. And next, we'll have Kevin introduce himself.
Thank you, Debbie. Again, my name is Kevin Silver. I live and breathe in Anchorage for most of my life, in fact. I've been a caregiver for 2 family members at the same time. I'm a care partner for my mom, who's still living, as well as my father-in-law, who has since passed this last spring. So then added an exceeding amount of stress to the family on both sides. But the good news is I was able to, when my mom went into assisted living, I was able to take the time and get a job with ARA so I can take what I've learned from the resource center and turn it around and assist others. And there'll be more on that when we get into the rest of the dialogue.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Welcome. Glad to have you with us. And Ruth, introduce yourself to us.
I'm Ruth Vale, and I live in Anchorage. And for a number of years, I was taking care of my husband, who was diagnosed in 2013. And as so many Alzheimer's folks are, he was exceedingly intelligent and covered it up for years and years. And I had thought that he was just changing personalities a little bit as he got older. So getting the diagnosis actually was a relief in some ways. But by that point, he was far enough along that he was losing some of his verbal skills. So it made it difficult with sorting things out and having conversations as to how to go forward. And it wasn't really a decision to take care of him. He was my spouse, so there wasn't a decision to make. And one of my questions, did I ever feel like giving up? Certainly not. It was, when you get married, it's for better or worse, and you have no way of knowing if what worse is going to be. It's still someone that one loves. And I think there was, in caring for him, there was an awful lot of positive experiences too. And as Colleen was mentioning, it seems like almost everybody I shared the information with, they knew had either cared for someone with dementia or had a friend who had dementia. And they're all were willing to help out or just to listen. And so there was a lot of support, as was at the Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska. Both my husband and I went to the classes there for a couple of years. And that certainly helped us through the morass of decisions. And there's an awful lot to learn as my husband was failing, my grandson was growing, and they at times were kind of in the same place. One was going forward and the other one was kind of slipping back. And of course, and they were very, very close actually. And with the finances, the one thing I did early on while he was still banking, I continued to work for a couple of years while he was able to stay home and could still drive. And he was still getting cash from the cash machine. And I didn't want to take that away from him, but I did get another account that he wasn't on and transferred a big chunk of money to that, just in case he got scammed or did something inadvertently that we wouldn't end up being paupers. And that's something he didn't know about. And when I offered to take over getting the money because I had to take over the finances, I think he was happy to let me do that at that point. Earlier, probably not, but at that point, he was fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
And in finding resources, Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska was where I got my resources and was helped through a lot of the decision-making process.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Appreciate you being here with us. And Sally, introduce yourself to us.
Hi, I'm Sally Werner, and I live in Anchorage. My situation is a little different than almost everybody else here in that I have a very dear friend who at age 49 was diagnosed with young onset Alzheimer's. So before diagnosis, we were friends. I was Aunt Sally to the children. We consider ourselves chosen family, so I was pretty close with them all along. And her situation is that she has a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old she was diagnosed 2.5 years ago, so they were a little younger then. And it's been really challenging for all of the family. Her husband is supportive as he's able to be. And I feel very fortunate that I was in a position where I could step forward and help, because he's working, she's not. Right with the diagnosis, the doctor told her at age 49 she was to stop driving. And that was a major challenge. I really admire those of you who are still hanging in there and being able to drive. I sometimes wonder how things would have been different if she had continued to drive then. But with the doctor saying not to, her husband, they decided it wasn't worth taking a chance on liability. So she gave up driving. And that's been a challenge too. When she was diagnosed, she was immediately so angry. And unfortunately took it out on her family because they were around closest to her. And so that's been an ongoing, I really keep hoping and thinking that maybe things are moving towards some more positive there, but it's really challenging when you have teenagers who are basically pushing back anyway and giving you a hard time a lot of the time. And then you add my friend, just anything they say or do, she sees as them reacting to her diagnosis and takes it very negatively. So we're just, it's like for all of you, it's an ongoing process. I don't live in the home, so I know I don't have the experiences that many of you have, but I do try to spend as much time as I can with her and support them. And I would just like to echo what others have said about Alzheimer's resource. Finding them has been just a blessing, because between the groups and the other thing, I guess the other thing that has changed so much for me since her diagnosis was reading. My subject matter has changed immensely, because there's so much to learn, and there are so many different viewpoints and ideas about things, because I truly believe the phrase, when you've met one person with Alzheimer's, you've met one person with Alzheimer's, because no two of them are going to be exactly alike. And so I'm very grateful for the help of Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska and all of those of you who do support groups and offer support. And I'm so admiring of those of you with dementia who are speaking up and helping educate the world about it, and those of you who have been big supporters. But I agree, like Ruth, I don't feel like it isn't a choice whether to support or not. She's my friend. And that's the way it's going to be.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sally. Thank you all for those introductions. Let's dig a little bit deeper now and talk about some specific situations and feelings that you're living with. I want to transition into this time by sharing a poem that someone wrote. Her name is Mary, and she was living with early stage Alzheimer's. And she wrote this: dementia is like waking up in a foreign city where you don't have the right clothes or the right money. You don't know the language, and no one knows the way home. So, Judy, can you start us out and just share, what did you do after the diagnosis? What were some feelings that you experienced? And did you know something was bothering you beforehand? But we'll start with Judy for this little section here. You can unmute on the little button there. Judy, we'll come back to you in just a moment then. Try to unmute and we'll come back to you in just a moment. Lynn, go ahead and unmute yourself and share with us, did you know something was bothering you or something was different before your diagnosis? And what were some of those feelings after diagnosis?
Well, my career as a speech therapist included administering educational assessments to school-age children birth to 18. And both of my parents had dementia. How could I then not be afflicted with this disease? When I received my diagnosis, I kept a secret to myself. Basically because as much as I love my family, I don't think they'd understand it. I had an assessment, my test scores were low, but they weren't in the basement. I was depressed, yet I didn't beat myself up. I didn't share my test scores with my family of men because they think I'm doing fine. I did connect with a neuropsychologist here in Anchorage, yet services, there's no solution, there's no cure, so services are lacking. I do take 2 prescriptions, yet I haven't not taken them to know their validity. Some folks lose their memory skills faster than others. There's no one size fits all. I'm grateful to have a strong faith base to hold on to my personal value, as I have a reason to be here.
Thank you, Lynn. You certainly have a reason to be here, and we're so glad you're with us.
Thank you.
Jamie, what about you? When you were first diagnosed, what were some of the feelings that you experienced? And did you know something was different or something bothering you before that? Oh, Jamie, we can't hear you for some reason. We see your lips moving.
Okay. There you go.
Okay. I knew that there was
better.
So I hung on to it for quite a ways, and then I started to I was angry and those kinds of things. So yeah.
Well, that's totally understandable. Thank you for sharing that honestly. And Diane, what about you? Did you know that something was bothering you, something was different? And what were some of those feelings after your diagnosis?
Prior to this, I did notice I have a history of chronic illnesses, so it is not the first rodeo, and it's hard to detect what was going on, but I did notice more increase. I've had 2 concussions in 2007 and 2012, and several head bangs. And so I started noticing more forgetfulness, leaving the water on after washing my hands, leaving the stove on. And then I didn't really connect it. I still connected it to the concussions, which I was told by the neurologist that everything was okay. It just takes a while for concussions and fog. I have periods with fog, and with the hearing loss, I found out that leads to dementia. And that's when I got more into it and found out about also learning and participating at the Alzheimer's with memory games. I started noticing, and I went down and took a couple of tests at the Alzheimer's Association. I found out that I had mild impairment, mild cognitive impairment. And so that's how it went on. And then I already expressed previously how I felt with the dementia. area looking at that, the unknown. But I am proactive instead of reactive. So that's why I'm equipping, educating, and learning so I can continue to live my best life. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And the memory assessment that Diane mentioned, we offer at Alzheimer's Resource. That's a free service that we offer to the community. And the brain games that Diane is mentioning are also offered through us at Alzheimer's Resource. So thank you, Diane. And Judy, let's try again. Can you unmute?
Got it.
There you go. So Judy, did you know something was going on, something was different before diagnosis? And what were some of those feelings that you experienced?
A little bit of forgetfulness, you know, and I think Jim probably noticed it probably before I did. But yeah, you know, so that was, I knew that I had it. But I didn't really, you know, will not go off the rails or anything. I just said, it's going to be slow. So whatever. So anyway, slow. I'm slower. I have to have notes more. So anyway, slow. I have what I need to do, and other things that's like I call people to connect more often. I don't need to wait for people to call me because I really want to be with people, you know, my friends, and they're really awesome. Like the one down here, Colleen Clobby, she's my best friend.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, that's so wonderful to have supportive friends.
Yeah, Jim went out of town for a week and she came up and stayed with me. But any of the feelings, you know, when you want to talk, people kind of like, wonder when she's going to be done, you know. So that kind of thing. But you know, but I'm still going out there and my friends are very, I have very good friends up here, especially Colleen, but yeah. So, I don't know, when I first thought I had it, I thought, oh, it's going to be a long time away. Well, here we are. So, yeah.
Thank you, Judy.
Yeah.
So glad you have so many supportive friends. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Plus the two of you.
Oh, thank you, Judy.
Yeah.
Love you.
Love you.
And let's transition now to the caregivers. Kevin, how did life change for you? What were some feelings that you experienced? And is there anything that you're learning that's grateful about your caregiving journey?
Well, thanks again, Debbie. There's some interesting things from my mom. I'm going to talk more about her than I am my father-in-law. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2015. And this was after she had a TBI, concussion, falling at her cabin, slipping on the snow and hitting her head. Luckily, she had her helmet on because she was snow machining, but still, that's where things started to go awry.
Wow.
She has 4 children. One of them live in the lower 48. When she was diagnosed, the family got together and devised a plan. We drew up a power of attorney. All of us are on it so we can all assist in all areas of her care. We broke things up. All the financial issues are handled by my sister because she's out of state, and it's something that she can do. The middle son prepares, at the beginning, handled all of her appointments and all her any assistance. The other two, which was myself and the oldest, we just stood by and helped whenever we could. And then in 2015, the fall of 2015, I retired from my position with the university after 37 years. The main reason was to provide assistance for her because she needed more and more help. And it wasn't something that anybody else within my family had the ability to do because they were not public employees. They were private employees, so they didn't have the benefit package that I had to be able to do so. So things changed a little bit. I became her caregiver companion. I actually hired on with an organization in town that taught me how to care for her and assist her with her needs. And the payment for this was done through her long-term care insurance. That was something that we set up as the family for her when my father passed away in the mid-1980s. So we were planning ahead then for her assistance, not knowing at all that she had this ailment coming way too soon, but we did plan ahead. As part of the development plan, we went to Alzheimer's Resource Alaska for some counseling. And that proved to be the most important step of our plan. Mom and I were welcomed into the Mind Matters support group. She was still living alone at Chester Park, the senior living facility here, and she was doing quite well, but she needed more outreach, and I needed the education and the support that Alzheimer's was able to give us. And she enjoyed her time. She kept asking me, every Wednesday, is it time yet? Do we get to go back? So it was definitely a fantastic support group for her as well. As the disease progressed, the family determined that she needed to move into a memory care facility because she started to wander. And none of us could provide the in-home support because our homes were never set up. Sadly, all three of us were never set up to have a mother-in-law home, mother-in-law apartment. So at the time, there was not a memory care facility, a bed available. So we moved her down to Indiana, which is near my sister, and she spent 2 years down there. What was interesting is in order to make her life better, at least her first introduction down there, I spent time making pictures of her current home at Chester Park and taking copies of all her photographs and everything and sending them down to my sister, who then recreated the room down in Indiana so she felt comfortable once she got there. And then Baxter Senior Living was finally built, and I was able to put a deposit down. And after 2 years, my wife and I went and flew down and picked her back up. We then recreated the room up here before we brought her up. So it too reminded her of home, no matter where it was going. Wow. So she doesn't remember much, but always seems happy. But she definitely is enjoyable. Another question you would ask is, did I ever feel like giving up? That's a very poignant question as a caregiver, as a son, as a spouse. And I want to say, no, I don't want to give up. But I would love for her to find the peace she deserves to be with my father. She's not happy, and she questions why she still has to go through this disease.
Yes.
Do I find any gratification in being her care partner? Absolutely. I found that the time spent with her to be special. When we have our talks, I can figure out what decade she's in her mind. I can learn so much about her childhood. I can learn the relationships of her friends and family. I can help her, talk her through her vivid dreams. And that part is so gratifying because she would wake up and ask me if I had seen my dad. I mean, she just spoke to him all night long in her dream. So that was important. How do we manage finances? Well, I already told we broke down the responsibilities. First of all was the planning ahead with the insurance, long care insurance plan. Safety was my responsibility. I added grab bars, rollators, transportation chairs, a walk-in soaking tub because she loved to bathe, providing all the transportation she needed to her friends and doctors and activities. Many of these items were covered by the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority mini grant. So that I want to thank them as well as the Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska for providing that assistance. And then another question was resources. Finding additional resources was tough. ARA was great. However, the new book that the National Caregiver Resource Guide, as I try to hold it up and get in focus, is what we always wanted and needed to have. We talked about writing it all the time in our Mind Matters classes. And so I'm certainly excited that the collaborative put it together for everybody.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for those very poignant words, very personal words. We appreciate that. And Colleen, what were some things that you noticed how life had changed? And did you ever feel like giving up? And anything gratifying about being a caregiver?
Well, of course, I don't feel like giving up, but pushing the pause button and not having to deal with it every day would be nice. So what's changed? I think in a lot of ways, Jamie and I have gotten closer together in our relationship. We've been together 14 years, maybe 13. I don't keep track. It feels like forever, doesn't it? We led two very different lives. Like, I am very much a homebody and love nothing more to spend, my whole weekend in the craft room. And Jamie could not stand to be in the house past like 10 o'clock in the morning. She'd have to go do errands all day. She just needed to be out riding her bike or running or something. I don't know what she did. And now we are literally 24/7 because I'm working at home. We are together a lot. And in that time, we just become more patient.
Yes. That's not a bad thing.
A lot of things you're learning.
Better connected, I think, than we were before. What were some of the other questions, Debbie? I forgot.
Anything gratifying about being a caregiver?
I wouldn't wish this upon anybody, and I know there are going to be some life lessons that I learned, something about being a better person, but right now I don't always feel that way.
I appreciate that honesty.
Yeah.
I bet many of our listeners can appreciate that honesty as well. And any words of insight about finding or managing resources?
The biggest thing, and it's the Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska. That is our resource. That is our.
But we have friends. There are people that.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Colleen.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing that I get from the Resource Center is knowing what's out there. Like, without that, it would have been hundreds of phone calls trying to figure things out. And fortunately, I know the system a little bit because my dad had Alzheimer's as well. We lost him about the time Jamie got her diagnosis. So I do know a little bit of the resources, but it's all Alzheimer's Resources of Alaska who's.
Thank you, Colleen.
Gave us insight into where to go.
Okay, great. Thank you. For everyone listening, we have about 5 minutes left. I know there's so much more we could talk about. I do want to open it up to some questions. If anyone has a specific question for someone on our panel, and if we don't have any questions that are popping up right now, we'll come back and hear a little bit more from Sally and Ruth and the rest of the panel. But Anne, are there any questions that are popping up at this point?
No, I think we can go on to hear from Ruth and from Sally. That would be great.
Okay, great. So Ruth, how did life change for you as you were care partnering with your spouse? Did you ever feel like giving up? And how did you find information about resources and manage that? I know you hit on that a little bit. What would you suggest to folks?
Well, life did definitely change. I worked for a couple of years after he was diagnosed, and coming home and having to deal with whatever crises happened while I was gone, or what didn't work, or what he'd lost, or there was always something to deal with. And so having enough patience before I learned enough about Alzheimer's, that I think the knowledge of the changes that take place, had I learned that earlier, it would have made it a lot easier. So it took us I wasn't available to go to classes at the resource center until after 2 years, I had to retire to take care of my husband. And then I could start going to the classes, and then I started learning what I wish I had known probably 4 years earlier. And that did help a lot. And towards the end, while I was working, I was utilizing the people mover, that they would come by and I would take him out and help him onto the people mover, and they would take him to an adult daycare center. And so I could work like 6 hours, and then I would go pick him up, because 2 trips on the people mover were one too many for him. At the end of it, couldn't handle it. So did that for about 5 months, and then it was time for me to just take care of him and be with him. And so I hadn't planned on retiring. It was definitely, most people when they have their retirement party are happy and just really enthusiastic, and I was actually in tears. But fortunately, I was old enough that I could get Social Security and Medicare. So that was not an issue for us, which was definitely different for many people. That it made the financial piece was not a problem. Good. And I did manage to get to a lawyer to have the power of attorney and all the other legal things taken care of, the healthcare directive, while my husband could be an active participant. And a month later, he was no longer able to. So doing it now instead of later is definitely an important thing to do.
Beautiful. Great reminder, Ruth. Thank you. And just briefly, Sally, I know you touched earlier on some of the resources that you found helpful, and that you mentioned you would never give up on your friend. Did life change in any other way, or is there anything else that you want to share?
Actually, I'm thinking of 2 things, and I'm going to branch off and not exactly answer your question, Debbie, but
sure.
My mother lived in Michigan, and she lived to age 96. And at about 89, she made the decision to go into assisted living. Or senior, it was really more senior care at the moment, but it was one that had the graduation, like she could move to a different when she needed the memory care. And somewhere right around 90, it just started slipping away from her. And I would go 3 or 4 times a year and just spend a week or 2 there. And one of the things that was just a revelation to me and made our visits so amazing. So if there are any folks out there who are in the early stages with someone, is when I used to first sit down with her and she'd say something, I say, "No, Mom, it's winter," or "No, Mom, it's this," or no, Mom, Dad's dead. Dad's not here anymore. And I finally decided that I was going to join her in her reality. That's how I expressed it, rather than trying to bring her into mine. Beautiful. And when I discovered that, it made all the difference. My visits with her were delightful. I didn't always know what she was talking about, but she was happy, and I responded to whatever she was saying or doing. And I would strongly encourage anybody who's in that caretaker position to think about that, is they're not able to change. They're not able to come back to us. But if you accept them right exactly where they are and just interact with them and enjoy whatever they're enjoying. I mean, she'd introduce me to a new friend and she'd say, "This is my sister, tell her your name." And I would just tell them my name, and they knew I wasn't her sister, but
right.
Just go with the flow of it, I would say. And the other one, I just wanted to mention, because you folks introduced me to Surviving Alzheimer's. It's a book by Paula Scott, and it is an amazing book. And I think they'll tell you, they might have some still available at Alzheimer's Resource if you're interested, or you can buy it on the market. And it's written real simply and divided up into little parts. Like if you have a specific question, you can go to that piece. You don't have to read through the whole book to find it or whatever. So that's another resource I think that was really helpful that you folks shared with us. So just reach out. The Mind Matters group, if you can attend it, is really, really helpful, because you get a chance every week to talk to other people who are going through similar and different and changing and whatever, all of those. And I just love being able to interact with people and appreciate all the suggestions that they give.
What was that book name? It's called Surviving
Alzheimer's, and it's by Paula Spencer Scott. Sorry, I'm just looking around over here because I have it within reach. So
that's
it's very good. I haven't even read all of it, but the part is really good. But
thank you for those shout outs, Sally, for meeting the person where they are and for that helpful book tip. That's a wonderful resource. Friends, it is 2:02. If you need to leave, we certainly understand. We do have some great questions in the chat box, so if you can hang out with us for a little bit longer, we'd love to answer Beth's question. So Beth writes, and I think this is for people living with dementia. Lynn, Diane, Jamie, Judy. Beth writes, as a friend of someone with Alzheimer's, is it best to let them try to figure out what they're trying to remember? Or is it okay to help with remembering? Diane, can you start us off on that? If you're having trouble remembering something, do you like when a friend prompts you or gives you some help, or is that not helpful?
I have hearing loss also. So that is the double trying for me. And people I've experienced with hearing loss, when you don't hear what someone says, other people try to speak up for you. So for me individually, because I have two issues, trying to remember what they said, but also being hearing impaired, I don't like to have other people talk to me or talk as if I'm not in the room or talk to the opposite person. So for me personally, I prefer to address, and I'm very assertive and an advocate for myself. I like to have correspondence and I read lips. So I like to have the person address me and not talk for me. I have methods that I have to help me remember. I like to have people write things down for me if I don't remember, show me visually. So that's what I choose to do. I would like to say that that is, it's an individual thing, but for me, that's what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Lynn, what about you? If you're having difficulty remembering something, is it helpful if a friend kind of prompts? Or is that not as helpful? What are your thoughts? And Lynn, you're on mute.
I find that I've always been a list maker, but it would be a list maker of tasks that we get completed. I now more often find my lists get longer and they don't get completed. And it's frustrating because that in and of itself, I see the deterioration. I'm a big scrapbooker, and I stopped a scrapbook in order to keep on going with my inundated lists. But now I'm realizing that I've got to choose. Am I going to do what I enjoy, or am I going to do what I feel like I need to? Because those lists are never going to get accomplished. And that's just something I've always done all my life. And I've got to learn how to just say, never mind the lists. They're going to scrapbook today. And that's a challenge because I'm used to being a taskmaster.
Yeah. So you're learning to balance out some of those harsh messages toward yourself. It sounds like be more gentle with yourself and do things.
I'm trying, but it ain't easy.
Good for you. Thank you, Lynn. And Judy, what about you? If you're having difficulty remembering a word or a phrase, is it helpful if someone tries to fill in the blank, or is that not helpful? And Judy, you're still on mute. That's okay.
Sorry.
There you go.
They can do that to me all day long. If I'm going to stutter and I have to do it like 5 more times, just do it the first time. Tell me.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, good. Thank you, Judy.
Yeah.
Sean wrote in the chat box, there's some lessons that he has learned being a family caregiver. You can read those over. Let's see, what else is there? Are there any other questions that folks have? We've got some requests for information. We are not, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, we are not printing certificates of attendance for this panel discussion. I know there's some folks in the chat box that are wanting a participation certificate.
We can do, it would be a certificate that just says you attended, the date and the times.
Okay, all right. So if you would like a certificate of attendance, they should just put it in the chat box?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I put your email in there as well, Debbie.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Very good. So, friends, oh yeah, Sally, go ahead.
Just 2 things I wanted to comment on. One, the last question from the person, I think it's really important to know your friend, get to know the person and figure out, I don't think everybody is going to like to have you supply the missing word, and I don't think everybody is going to not like it. And I think you need to try it with the person and see what works and just be really observant. Because I find it with my friend, sometimes she's happy for that and other times she is not.
Oh, Sally, such a good word of encouragement.
And then the other thing I wanted to say, just what Sean wrote about, we should all be prepared to be caretakers. Not too long ago, Anne showed us a TED Talk about the lady who said, first she asked how many people in the audience, or 1 out of 3 was going to have Alzheimer's. I'm just using the numbers, it's wrong. And so they said, look around for 3 of you. And if you weren't the one who got that, you should know that you will be a caretaker, because you're either going to be taken care of or you're going to be a caretaker. And so I think his advice to learning for all of us, if we could all learn how to better do it, we're all going to be one or the other here one of these days, very likely in the way our society and culture is going. So
good reminders, Sally.
Like to say,
yes, Judy, please.
Is it open?
It sure is. We can hear you well.
Okay. I go to the dog park every day, or even twice a day, maybe to wherever. And I go there and I stay on the trails where people are walking. You know, there's all kinds of trails, but I get where they're. So I really want to be with people, even if I just walk past them and say something about their dog, or when you stand there for 30 seconds and then you go off. So I've been also calling a lot of my friends that I haven't seen for a long time, all over Alaska or Anchorage, and I'm inviting people to go to walk with me, and it's just been really good. I need people around me and that sort of thing, like Colleen.
Good for you, Judy.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I like the, can I,
Oh, yes, Diane, please.
I can go ahead.
Yeah, we sure can. Go ahead. We can hear you well.
I wanted to say there is a great program that I have benefited from that Alaska Alzheimer's has provided for me and anyone else, and I would encourage anyone else, again, to take the brain sharpener class that is offered. I do have a poem. I graduated last year. It is an intense program for like twice a week, an hour a week, and twice a week. And it's very beneficial and life-changing for me to adjust to the new norm for me. And when I graduated, I wrote a poem because it took a lot. When I finished with the class, they challenged us in different areas on our driving, our routines, also on choosing doctors, figuring things out. It really helped my brain and helped me to benefit a lot more. And the poem that I wrote is, my brain may not be as sharp as a tack, but it has grown and developed since the class. That's a fact. There were instructions given by the teachers, so we know what to do. There were new options and angles to be reviewed with each assigned task, and working together as a group was a blast. From the start to the finish, I was challenged every minute. Captions were put in place so I could keep up the pace and not feel out of place. Like physical weightlifting muscles to grow, this class worked my brain so I survived and will continue to thrive, and being a part of this has greatly assisted me. And I am grateful and thankful for Alzheimer's for sponsoring me and letting me participate and see this graduation date. I also received a grant to participate in that. And so I'm just telling you, it's very beneficial. If anyone that hasn't taken it, for caretakers, for people that are living with it, it is really something worth to invest in yourself that will help you. And I would like to thank Alzheimer's for being there for these marvelous programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. So Anne posted the link to get information about Mind Aerobics, and I put our website and phone number for information about any of our programs and services. Anne, what are your thoughts? Should we start wrapping up?
Yes, if there are any other particular questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat box right now, or we're also monitoring Facebook. But I think this has been a wonderful time of sharing. Thank you so much, everyone who participated on the panel. Thank you, everyone who joined us on Zoom and on Facebook. And this it has been recorded, so it will be available to watch on Facebook, as well as probably somehow through our website. Oh yes, thank you for the reminder here. We did have a comment about, and Debbie, maybe you can speak to this if you don't mind. Colleen had a comment about spirituality.
Oh, yes. So Colleen wrote, how about the spiritual aspect of this disease for both the one struggling with it and the caretakers struggling with it? I have noticed that the heart takes over for the mind. Colleen, thank you so much for that feedback, that observation. This is a huge area. As a matter of fact, spirituality is such an important part that we're going to be doing an entire hour and a half Caregiver 101 in the new year. So stay tuned for that, because that will be an upcoming class that we will be offering. Again, our classes are called Caregiver 101s. You can get information about those on our website. But spirituality is more than just attending a church service. that certainly is part of it for some folks. But spirituality more is, who am I at the core of my being? And as things change, as disease, as cognitive changes occur, who am I in the core of my being? So such an important aspect. We obviously didn't have time to delve into that today, but stay tuned. That will be something we'll be discussing in the future. Any closing comments, thoughts, feedback?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I'm losing how to spell. Is anybody else doing that? Really? Oh, okay. I guess that
happens sometimes.
We also have some folks on our forum today who are living with some type of dementia.
Yeah. Not bad yet, but it's annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I hope it's not across the board as it goes.
What supports do you have, Judy, that when you need to turn to about spelling of words? Do you have something you use to help with that?
No, I haven't thought about it. But, can you be my teacher?
Of course.
Consult
Just as you all are my teacher. So things autocorrect can help. Depending on the autocorrect can help, depending on this, if you're on the phone. Or on the computer. I tell you, you know what I do? I Google a word if I don't know how to spell it.
Yeah.
And Sally had a thought along those lines too.
What?
If you use the computer much, there is a speech to text.
Oh.
I don't know if it's an app or what. I don't know. My grandson, they had him using it because he has a terrible time with spelling. And so he was losing a lot of credit on things he was trying to turn in. This was in elementary school. And you might try, I don't know how much you use the computer, but you can't, where you can speak it and it types it for you. And then you can just kind of look and try to correct it. That's not going to help you with everything that you do, but it is available.
Okay. Or I could go to your grandson's teacher.
That's right.
go to his class.
Sean
you call me up anytime. I've always had good spelling until I lose it.
Okay.
So.
That's right. Sean also wrote in the chat box something called speech to text is easy on Mac computers. So there's some help available app-wise. If you have some sort of app, that might be available as well. Again, thank you all panelists. Appreciate your honesty, your vulnerability, your sharing. Anne, are there any other announcements that we need to close with?
Just if you'd like to reach out to us, whether you are living with some type of dementia, if you've been recently diagnosed, or you've been living with that for a while, or if you're a care partner, a caregiver, a care companion, we can schedule a consult with you one-on-one if you'd like to meet in person, or if you'd like to talk on the phone. We'd be happy to do that. Kevin?
I also want to mention that we've been talking about a lot of the services that Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska provides, and 99% of it is at no charge.
Yes, good reminder. Thank you, Kevin.
So please don't hesitate. It's not a monetary issue. If you need our help, give us a call.
Yeah, we're here to help in any way that we can.
Thank you all again. Take good care of yourselves. Reach out if you need any support. And thank you so much for being here. We are meeting tonight at 7 p.m. for another panel. If any of you are available to join us, we will have some different folks on the panel and some folks that are the same. You're welcome to be with us tonight at 7 p.m. as well. Take good care of yourselves. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Take good
Lucy.
care.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks.